All these relatives are really good to me. I could never be so well blessed, Carol.
Well, let's start with the Aunt Jean. You've got a violin here, and tell me that story again about the background of it.
Okay, this violin belonged to my husband, Happy McClellan, and his father used to play for all the house dances, because years ago there were no halls. They all met in the farmhouses and had their entertainment. And his father used to play the violin there, and his daughter, Dolly, used to entertain the people by step dancing. And she was a terrific step dancer. And they went all around the community playing the violin. And this was their entertainment in those days.
That was before TV, and that was before internet, and that was before...
There was no other entertainment, only this. And then the gramophone came out after that, but they still did a lot of playing even after that came out, house parties.
And people would have pianos and what have you. And
that's right. And they always had lunch, and at 12 o'clock, and they all had a great time.
Now, you grew up in Manitowoc? No?
Sandfield.
You grew up in Sandfield. And what are some of your earliest memories from there?
Oh, where will I start? Well, in the first place, I lived right beside the river and the lake. That's number one, that stone house which my dad built. And we had the greatest young life of any kids that ever lived, because we had a hill to ski on, and we had a lake to swim in, and we had a lake to skate on, and we had a hill on the main road, because we never had any cars and just horses, and we could sleigh ride down that hill, those two hills, and go right to the bridge. And we did that all our lives as long as we were able to do it. And we skated all over Lake Manitou, my goodness, all over. And in the summertime, we swam in the lake almost every day. So we had lots of activity in our young lives.
And where did you go to school?
I went to school in Sandfield, in the school that was there that burned down. And years ago, they were able to take grade 9 and 10 in the public schools. The teachers were trained to do that. But when you got your third year high school, you had to go somewhere else. So I came into Manitowoc, and I took my third year high school. And then I went to Owen Sound and took a business course.
Oh, I didn't know you went to Owen Sound.
Mm-hmm. I went to Owen Sound and took the business course at the business school that was there. And then I came back up here, and I worked at A.J. Wagg's office in the summer, and for the 4 years the war was on, of the years, because it was in 1942, I used to come back here in the summer, and in the winter we all went to Toronto. And we spent the Toronto there and came back up here around the 1st of May for about 4 years, a whole gang of us.
Wow.
And in Toronto, we had the best time of our lives, because we all worked the war work, and we all were on different shifts, but there were about 15 of us from the Manitowoc that were working there. And we used to, every night, pick out a dance hall to go to dance. And then my sister would call all the Manitowocers, and we'd have a whole gang of them come to the hall, and we just had a ball. And not like today, we could walk to the hall, walk home to the from the hall, go to any restaurant along the line. We used to go to the dance hall on Bloor Street, and we went in, we'd have our lunch, at 12 or 1 o'clock. And we could walk home or get a taxi or do whatever. Not like it is today, I'm sure. I wouldn't be seen out on those streets in the daylight. Oh, it was the best days of Toronto too, because there were 3 shifts working in all the plants. And there were 2 shifts that one shift was working, one shift was sleeping, and the other bunch were out, gallivanting around. And the one thing I always remember, my sister and I, everybody that came to Toronto, we took them to see the Happy Gang. That was our real outing for everybody. Oh, we had the grandest time in our young days. And then we went to all the dances in Manitoulin. And when the war was on, the guys were all leaving. And this one time there was a whole bunch of them leaving. So they had dances all over Manitoulin. And my sister and I and my brother went to 12 dances in 2 weeks. They had one every night, all week. Nobody had any more fun in life than me. Just great.
Now tell us about when you met Happy, Uncle Happy.
When I was 17 years old, when I was into school, in here, when I took my grade 10, 11, third high school. Yeah, when I was 17, he and I met, and we never got married till the war was on. He was 24, and I'm the same age as him, except 2 months difference. So we got married in 1942.
1940.
And he was 24 and I was 24.
Wow.
And then he went overseas. We got married in November the 13th, weren't we brave? Friday the 13th of November. And he went overseas in March of the next year, 43. And he was over there till 1946, overseas. And then he came home in March.
And he was in the D-Day invasion, wasn't he?
Oh, he sure was. That was terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I was never very fussy about coming back here, but he had a job to come to, so I just said, well, this is the way it has to be. So that's the way it was. And he went to work at the Mastons again, because he was a butter maker at the Maston's Creamery. And so he went back there to work for about, I guess it was about 1 year, because his feet gave out walking on the cement floor, so he couldn't do it anymore. So.
And Uncle Happy, he lived until what year?
He what?
What year did he live until? Uncle Happy was...
How old was he when he died, Aunt Jean?
Oh, I'm sorry. He was 70 to 73, I think, because he died in 1991 on December the 21st, 1991. That's when he passed away.
And it was Happy's father that owned the violin. Is that true?
That's true.
And what was his name?
Andrew.
Andrew McLennan.
Right.
Right. And he was an entertainer in town then.
Yes.
And was he? Did he also play with some of the other people in town?
Yeah, there'd be somebody playing on the piano or on the organ with him.
Who were some of the people at the time?
I'm just trying to figure out who would be in that age.
I guess Bob Hilson would be one of them.
Yeah, he'd be one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a great violinist, that gentleman. My goodness. There was a whole gang of them in about that age, but I don't know. Sometimes it was the women that played the organ, and I'm trying to figure who it would be. Maybe Mrs. Owen McGuire could have been one that played the piano. She would be around that age.
Yeah. And tell me about your family. Who was your father?
My father was Elias Hutchinson.
And who was your mother?
My mother was Grace Mitchell.
Oh.
And My dad was born in southern Ontario in New Glasgow, but my mother was born in Clover Valley out here. They had a farm, and then they moved to Sandfield when she was 5, and she lived all her life in Sandfield. And my dad came there when he was wait, now I think. Oh, he'd be about maybe. I know he was 32 when I was born. So I would say he would have come there maybe when he was in his 20s, 25 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked at Wegg's store they had a general store over there at Minnemoya, and he worked in the store for a number of years.
And do you remember the early days of Little Current and what it was like there?
Well, you know, to get to Little Current was quite an honor, because we never got any farther than around Sandfield in those days, because it was all horse and buggy and horse and cutter. And no, I don't really know much about Little Current of his days. No, I don't.
But mostly, so you were in Sandfield, Manitowoc.
Yeah, that was the area.
Places like that.
Yes.
And Michael's Bay, did you ever go there when it was?
No, I never.
I guess it was gone by that time,
Yes,
wasn't
it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The only time we ever got to Little Current was when we were going back to Toronto, because we had to get up. Reuben Emmer used to take the horses, and we'd get a ride into here, and then we'd get with Reuben Emmer, and he'd take us to meet the train, because the train ran then. And all those years the war was on, we all traveled by train from Little Current.
Was there ever a train on Manitoulin
No,
Island?
there never was one on Manitoulin. Little Current was its destiny.
Even though they made it so that the trains could cross the bridge,
Yes.
they never had a train on Manitoulin.
No,
Isn't that
they
so?
did not.
That's interesting. So, do you remember? My great grandparents? That would be William Mackenzie. Do you remember him?
No, I don't remember him.
Donald Mackenzie.
Yes. They lived at Little Current, though, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Yes.
Yeah. So you may not have seen them that
No,
much.
I didn't see them. The only one of them that I ever saw was Melvin's mother and Leslie.
Yeah.
Les Mackenzie and his wife.
And they lived in Tacoma.
Yeah, that's right, yes. And Bill and that Hilton, Bob Hilton, because he played the violin all the time for all the little gatherings.
And his wife, did you know her?
No.
Yeah. Trying to think of some other. When you were working here in Manitowoc, didn't you work on the? Did you work for Bell Canada at one time, or for the
No.
telephone company?
No.
Oh, I thought somebody here did.
No.
I knew you had a switchboard here.
Yeah, we had a switchboard downtown. Jill was the one that worked for the switchboard.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was your daughter, Jill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember going in there and seeing her with all the switches and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the first car you ever had?
Oh, it was a Ford Coupe, and it had to be about about 1926, because it was just about wore out when we got it. Oh, it was terrible. It would, when we went to shift gears, it would sometimes fly into 2 gears at once. Oh, it was a desperate thing. We had it for quite a while because we couldn't afford nothing else.
Would that be a Model T or?
Yes,
it was a Model
T.
T. Mm-hmm. And what did you have after that? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember what we got after that. We had so many cars. My goodness.
But you'll never forget the first one.
No. And the last one was a... No, isn't that dumb? Oh, isn't that stupid? I can't remember that one. It was a big car. And what kind of cars did the police always buy?
Oh, they buy Fords and Dodges and
Sometimes they got big
Chryslers,
Oldsmobiles.
Oldsmobiles and
No,
Buicks,
wasn't that? It was
Chevrolet.
no, it was a bigger name than that. What? It, well,
Anyway,
that's
it'll come. It'll come to it. So tell us about this house, because I've always wondered about this house. Who built it and how?
My dad.
Really? So your father built this?
He was a builder and a mason.
And what year would that have been? About?
1956.
Oh, same age as me.
And he and his workers went to the reserve and dug all those stones out of the earth and brought it back to Mantoine and built a house. And he had two good masons that were on the reserve, and that was Ojig was their names, their last names. And the two of them helped him, Joseph Ojig and the other one, and they helped him build a stone wall. And the bottom part are all boulders that Happy and I got out of a gravel pit and hauled the stones in here to do the bottom part, and then on the top they used those other stones.
Well, it's a good solid house.
Yes,
It's not going to blow over.
No.
Tell me about, what was the first time you met Grandpa Joseph? Joe Joseph. When's the first time you met him?
Just a minute now. I never met them when they was in Toronto, in Owen Sound. I met them when they were in Toronto. And I guess the first time I met them was when the war was on, because Happy used to have to stay in the barracks down there in Toronto, and then he'd come to Dolly's and have his meals, because Dolly always cooked his meal for him, supper. And then that's when I first met him, when we were first married. I never knew him before. That'd be 1942.
So that must have been when my father first met Mum. Then, when he must have stopped in there or
Yes.
something. That's
Oh
something.
yes.
And then, Grandpa Joseph, he liked to go up to his cottage there on Lake Manitou, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And
He did.
you still have one there too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice cottage.
Yes.
And when that was a mill at one time out
Yes.
there.
There was.
Do you remember it when it was operating?
No, I don't remember, but it just closed a little while before we came in here. Before I came here to live, because Ed, you know who I'm talking about.
Uncle Ed?
Yes, he worked in the mill out there. And they used to call it Vincent's Landing.
Vincent's Landing. Because you could still see the old boiler sitting out there someplace. Yeah,
Good.
That's interesting. About you, ma'am, do you have any question that you'd like to ask
Well,
Aunt Jean?
I'd just like Aunt Jean to just tell us any story. What's your favorite story of anything? Like, I remember when we were at your birthday party last year, and they told you this is a story of you arranging the airplanes for the municipal airport and how you had to call up the guy from the U.S. Army. So if you've got another good story like that, I'd like you to tell that.
No, I got a better story than that.
All right, that's the one I
Carol.
want to hear.
I just had to, every little while, I go to the church quite often because I worked in the church. In this church, I first went when I was 17, and then I never went for a number of years. And then when we moved back here, then I went there. In 1946, I started there again, and I go all the time and work what I can do. But this is the funny thing. That church was really good, but they had a Sunday school at the back. And it started to leak. And there were pots and pans and stuff all over the back. And the kids were almost scared to go into the school or into the place because the boards were all rotten. It was just a horrible mess. So we had a meeting with the powers that be, and we had about 5 meetings with these men, and we never got to first base. So my president of my group that I belong to, she said, her name was Lizzie McPhee, and she said, we're not putting up with these men no longer. She says, we're going to build this Sunday school. And I said, well, what should we do? Well, she says, she set a day, She says, you girls come and bring an axe and bring a nail peddler and bring a saw. That was our, no, axe, not a saw, axe. Axe, hammer, and a nail pole. So the whole gang of us went up to that Sunday school and we started. And we were making one heck of a noise, you know that. Ripping up the boards and hammering and pounding away. And, but before that happened, we got fed up with this men going through this. So we said we needed some money, so we have to go higher up in the church. So we decided we'd go to the top notch of the church and ask for some money. So we asked for $3,500. So there were 5 of us women. We came to the church, and these 2 guys came from the missions at North Bay, and one was from Sudbury and one was from up in North Bay. And they said and we called them to have a meeting with us and the men. Well, they all came. So this man said to us, what are you thinking about doing? And we said, we're going to build a Sunday school. And this guy, he was a German, Lautenschläger was his name. And he says, women building a Sunday school. I never heard the like of it. Why would we ever give women money to build a Sunday school? And, well, we said we're going to build a Sunday school one way or another. And we're asking you for $3,500. So the other gentleman, after we all said we were building this Sunday school, he said, if these women are so determined to build this Sunday school, I will see that they get the $3,500. So it wasn't very long till we got the $3,500. And then, I got my story here myself, then we decided to tear it down. So there were all us women working our fool heads off, tearing down the Sunday school. And every once in a while, the men would go by the church, and they'd come in and take a look at what we were doing. And they'd say, what are you women trying to do anyway? Well, we're going to tear the Sunday school down. That's what we're going to do. He'd turn and walk away. Another day, another guy would be going down by the street, and he'd come in and we'd wrecking the place. And finally, Dick McMullen, that lived up the street, he said, well, I think if you girls are really going to build a Sunday school, I think I'll come and help you. And one by one, they must have got embarrassed. They all started to help, and we got the Sunday school, we got there today. We would have never had it if that gentleman hadn't offered us the $3,500. Then we built the kitchen. The kitchen was included, but it wasn't a very good kitchen. So then the girl, and there wasn't room for us to move around when we were busy, because we were always running into one another. So one of the girls said, we're not putting up with this any longer, so we're going to ask for another $3,500. So we did, and they gave us 5 years to pay back each loan, but we paid it all back, each one in 3 years. And so when we asked them for the next loan, we never had any problem. They gave it to us, and we renovated our kitchen. And that's what we still have today. But they just would not do nothing about the Sunday school. But we got it anyway. Oh, I've got lots of stories of getting stuff for this town, I can tell you.
Seems like it mostly you roll up your sleeves and start at it. That's the best way to go.
Or you got to fight with men.
That's right. I said when I told it at the church the other day, I said, this isn't very good for the men. This isn't very good to talk about what the men were doing. Well, that was the truth. Oh, goodness sakes. Well, this place has gone down terrible since I've come here in 1946 to live. And we've had a council in here that are absolutely useless. And they wouldn't excel themselves to do nothing. And they were in there for 8 years, and why people voted them back in, I'll never tell you why. But this year, my friend down the street, I said to Jane, we're getting rid of this council. And I said, you and I are going to go out campaigning for these 3 people that we want to go in that we know will be progressive. And I called up the one guy and I says, can I be your campaign manager? Sure. So she and I worked ourselves to death, and the guy that we want topped the scale. The next guy was he got the Reeve job. The next guy got the highest in the council, and the next one got the second highest, the lady. So we got our whole 3 that we wanted in, and they're just, if they hadn't left such a mess to clean up, we would have been going ahead. But they had to do all these new roofs and all the crazy things that they never did one thing down. They had an idea that we should have a fire hall. Now listen to this, Blaine. In a little place, Manitowoc. And they went and got a price on it. And it was $1.5 to build the kind of a fire hall they had designed. Now, what do we need $1.5 fire hall in Manitowoc? They all are volunteers, and they know where every place is around here. And they had a big kitchen and a bedroom for them to sleep and a big room for them to have a meeting in. It was just ridiculous. And it was, nobody in their sane mind would ever agree to that. So they knocked that down. But the one they had, they let it leak till it was leaking all over the place because they wouldn't spend any money on it. So they've had to fix that and 2 or 3 other roofs and just no end. We were supposed to be fixing this here theater, and they never did nothing about that, and they had 2 votes on it for the municipality, and it was the priority thing to get done. Twice. They never did nothing about it. So we're working on that now. And hopefully we will get it done by next spring. And we turned our church, they took the pews all out of our church and put chairs in, and we've let the theater use our church for their performances. Because they didn't have anywhere else to go, and they hadn't had any for a couple of years, so they wanted to get back in the groove of doing it. So we decided to let them do it. So they did. So they had the place 9 performances, and they had the place full. So we were really glad for that. Because
So
I thought they were going to fold up.
Did you ever want to run? Did you ever want to run for office? Did you ever want to get into politics?
Blaine, it isn't safe, because I've been in jail.
What?
I got too strong of a mind of what I think. And some of these people would have me so aggravated that they'd put me in jail for sure. Oh, I've had all kinds of opportunity to do that. But I belong to all the organizations in this town. And right now, we're just hoping that we'll get my friend down the street and I did a survey of the number of people that needed homes, like seniors. And right now, I think we're going to get 24 senior buildings and a heated swimming pool. And she and I have worked ourselves silly, and I think we're going to accomplish it. And then the other thing, for 4 years, I've been trying to get them to preserve the hockey trophies. One of them up there tore the cabinet down, threw the trophies in the corner, sent some down to the museum. Some of them took them home to fix. And I've been trying to get it done for 4 years. And I said to Jane, when we get this new council, they're going to do this at that arena. So right now they're going to bring the cupboards in, and the trophies are all done over, and they're all going to be there for people to see, which they're supposed to be in all these places. Oh, the stuff they just let go under the rug is just pitiful. And the math, you wouldn't know about that, Blaine, either, but the corner house that goes down to Jill's was just, it was built in 1890 something. And the family that had it, it's an awful mistake to leave stuff to 2 or 3 people in a family. And they left this house to the 3 kids. And all they did was fight among themselves. Because Helen did not want to sell it, Rennie wanted to sell it, Kathleen Ann was passed away, and this girl wouldn't give in to selling it. So they just let it rot. And it got so bad they would never even pay the taxes on it, so the township got it back. And they interceded to see how much it would cost to get rid of it. You know, tear it down and clean up the yard was going to cost them $60,000. So they didn't want to spend that on that, so they just let it get worse. But lucky this week, or not this week, a couple of weeks ago, a contractor came along that does this kind of a job. Rebuilds old places that are run down. And he got the job to redo it. And his wife is an interior decorator, and they want to put it back the way it was originally. So we were so lucky, and so the township said to save $60,000, we'll give it to them for nothing. So we gave it to them for nothing.
Wow.
The lot and the wreck of a house.
That's important, isn't the history? You've been involved in the museum and so on. How important is history here?
History's so important to me. I just hate seeing anything destroyed that has some history value. I belong to the museum from 1955 to 2014. That's how long I belonged to the museum. And I and there were 5 other women and me and some men that opened that museum down there in 1955. And we've looked after it up to 2014, and then they put in some newer ones that, well, I wouldn't say they aren't doing a bad job, they are. We've got a great curator, that's what I really like. He's really excellent. Oh, I belong to the Nichols Bay Historical, and I belong to the museum down here. And I'm working on history all the time. I just love it.
Now, what's your message for people in the future? If somebody's going to look at this years from now, what's your message to people for what to do in their life and history and so on? What's your message to people?
Well, things are changing so quickly, Blaine, I can hardly prophesy. But what I would like to see is that people be more accountable to their responsibilities and not be so lazy of making the place that they live in or keeping it the way it's supposed to be. And my dad always taught all of us to say, it isn't what the community owes you, it's what you owe to the community. And he brought us up on that because we did all kinds of community work at Sandfield. And I would like to see a change around this attitude of this younger generation of thinking that everything should be handed out to them with no effort. And keep the place that they're living in a nice, respectable place. This place has gone down so badly, it's terrible. So anyway, I hope that will happen, but I don't know how it'll ever work. Like Melanie says at Manitoulin Transport, when they hire this younger generation, they don't care whether they work or whether they don't. And they have more excuses why they have to stay at home than they do coming to work. They have a great time keeping people working. Terrible. And at Gore Bay, there's 250 people working in that Manitoulin Transport where Melanie is. And she says they're just coming and going all the time because she says they will not work. It's terrible. Do you have any trouble with your workers, Blaine?
Well, one of the things that we're finding out is that the best workers are sometimes people who are coming into the country because they know how to work. And
Yeah, they do.
And they want to be great. And a lot of people are down on them, but if you look around who's doing all the hard work, it's not necessarily people, that have been here for generations. It's people who've been here one generation.
You're right. Because they were saying that down around Southampton, where there's a bunch of orchards and Collingwood and so on, that they can't get any of our nationality to pick apples, so they have to get the ones from Mexico to come up here to pick apples. Now that's just disgraceful.
But they work.
No, they won't.
Yeah, no, but the people who they bring in do work.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, hard workers.
I don't know what they're ever going to do with them, I can't tell you. It's beyond my...
Oh.
Because all of us, like you, and even your generation, we're all taught to work.
Well, let's get to the sort of the let's just wrap it. We're starting to get to the wrap up part. So everybody wants to know the one question. First of all, how old are you, Aunt Jean?
101.
And what's the secret? How do you get to be 101?
Well, I don't know how I ever got to be one. I've always been a very active person in sports and all that, all my life. And I always was brought up on good garden food. And I still try to do that still. And I don't really know. I just am. And if I could see, there isn't much I couldn't do. But I can't see. That's terrible, but people have a lot worse than that, so I just don't bother talking about it. I'm going to go to an eye specialist next Monday, and I hope he knows what he's doing. And maybe I'll do something for it. I can't tell you what's what. I've just been a very, very active person, and in all kinds of things.
Well, you're
Well,
the
that's-
matriarch now. I mean, we were talking about to Raymond yesterday, and he's the oldest Mackenzie man now. When you think about it, so from the other side, you're the matriarch. You're the oldest lady that we have.
Yeah?
Yes.
So
You're the leader.
you're the leader.
Yes, and you know, I'll tell you, this is another, somebody said that to me. I said, well, the one thing I want to say, I could never be so blessed with so many good friends. I am telling you, there's never a day that somebody doesn't bring me something to eat or comes in to visit to see how I am. I am just shocked. And I have three nephews that live on the island. And the whole three of them. Jean, if you want anything, just give us a call and we'll be there to help you. And that is true. And all my nieces, I've got all kinds of nieces too, girls. I got some of their pictures up here. And every one of them, I could never be so well blessed. I have a woman in here that wanted to go to the eye specialist on Thursday. And she can't get one person that she knows or has any friends with to take her to Espanola. Why, I could just call up about a dozen of them. And I'd be gone. So she had to cancel her appointment. Why, that's terrible. I could never been so blessed with so many good friends. And I go, when my sister comes, I've lost two of my sisters, and one of them ran the Williamson's hardware store, which her two sons run now. But I could not be so well blessed with people helping me. My one niece and her husband come and pick me up nearly every Sunday when they get up here. They came up the last of June, and they've been picking me up every Sunday for supper at my sister's. And who on earth would be bothered with that? And then Melanie brings me home, comes with me too sometimes. And then, or she'll come out and bring me back, or the other niece will bring me back. Now, how many people can say that? And that goes on for, well, they didn't come up this year till near the end of June, but that's July, August, and September, and they go home in November, or on Thanksgiving. I just have never been so well blessed. I can tell you that right now, and I don't know, I'm no better than anybody else, but I sure have lots of friends.
Well, we all love you, Aunt Jean.
Oh, I know, they're so good to me.
We wouldn't
When Jill
think
was-
of coming here and not coming by and saying hello to
Well,
you.
I should say not, and you better not. When Jill was so sick, I had so many people that drove us to Sudbury for her treatment. So she had that cancer for 7 years, and then she went into remission for about 2 or 3, and then she got it terrible, and that was the end. But at the last 2 years, it was just wicked. We had to drive to Sudbury, and she'd have to stay there a week, and I never left her by herself. I always went and stayed with her, because I didn't have any other excuse. And when I think of a person just wanting to go to the eye specialist at Espanola and hasn't any friend that she can ask to take her, why, that's just awful. I just can't imagine it.
Well, there's a story this week about elderly people that have been gone for a week at a time, not talking to anybody.
Oh,
And it's a problem because people are alone and there's no one that they have to talk to.
it's terrible.
But Well, I'm
And-
glad that you have a support group here for you.
Oh, I could never be so well blessed.
And we-
Support army. It's not just a
It's an
group.
army,
It's an
yeah.
army.
You have a lot of people who love you here, that's for sure, and who we.
Oh yeah, this here
we
guy that
can't. You're a
runs
celebrity here.
this guy that runs that roofing office up there and sells steel roofing for houses. He tells everybody I'm his girlfriend.
Oh.
And I'm telling you, he is so good to me too. And the Reeve, David Ham, I could never get a better person on the face of the earth that's so good to me too. I don't understand it at all. It's way beyond my comprehension.
Well, Aunt Jean, we've been here almost an hour, so we
that's
don't
all-
want to worry you down. We don't want to
Oh,
worry
I don't
you.
get tired.
Yeah.
No.
Well, let's get a picture. Let's get. Here's the violin in front of you here.
Okay.
I just.
And I'm so glad to give it to you.
Can you just hold it up for
Oh,
us
yeah.
so we can just see you
Now,
with
which
it?
way?
Oh wait, here. Let me get there. Just
There
go
we
like
go.
that.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Carol.
Yeah, and that violin's got a lot of stories.
Yes, it sure has.